Chapter 21. What the hell is going on here? No one was shocked more than Gabe at Imogen's unfortunate timing. He hadn't heard her pull up, being so focused on the chaos of the last several minutes. He jumped back from the other woman like he'd been hit with the electric wire, again, unwrapping her arms from around his waist as he did. It's not what it looks like, I swear. Imogen raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms over her chest, unmoved. Gabe cleared his throat. Lopez, go wait for the sheriff inside. We'll be in a few moments. Anita looked between the couple and wordlessly did as she was asked. If she felt badly for the kiss, nothing showed on her face. It was like she had retreated inward again. Gabe turned his attention toward Imogen. She looked amazing. It had been about a week, and he'd missed her terribly. Somehow knowing she was out of state made it worse. He couldn't just run into her. Imogen's hair was wild, her cheeks bright with temper, and her eyes full of fire. Gabe gulped at the look, a mix of hurt and hatred. He had some explaining to do. A lot of explaining. He just hoped it would be enough. It's a long story. I'm going to tell you everything. About the kiss, the dead body on your lawn, or the fact that my horse just galloped past me like the hounds of hell were on his heels? About all of it, he replied sheepishly. He raised his hands in front of him, silently pleading. Listen. Imogen raised a hand. I honestly don't know if I want to hear it all right now. I've been in the car for 5 hours, and this truck is like driving a cardboard box in a windstorm. It's been an incredibly stressful day, and it's just getting worse. The last thing she'd expected to see was Gabe locked in a kiss with the other woman. She'd trusted him, more than she'd ever trusted anyone. She couldn't think about that now, though. The ache in her chest grew. What happened to my horse, Gabe? Gabe hated the look on her face, and the fact that he'd put it there. He'd never intended to kiss another woman, but it had been so unexpected that he'd been delayed in responding. That he was guilty of. He ran down the gate during the fight when Anita's ex-boyfriend showed up and took off into the woods. As he spoke, he pointed in the direction where Rowdy hid on the trail to her house. She turned around and returned to the truck without another word. Wait, where are you going? Gabe ran to catch up, reaching out to touch her arm. She jerked away, unable to contain her emotions if he touched her. Not when he'd just been touching someone else. How long had that been going on? She was an idiot to assume he'd just been trying to help his friend. His friend, right. Now she knew why he'd been so close-mouthed about Anita. They probably had a long history and didn't want to make her suspicious. This is your fault, fighting over some girl like teenagers. My horse is gone because of you. I'm going to see if he's at my house. If he isn't there, I'll comb the woods looking for him. He shook his head. How could he make her understand? This was all just one huge, no, gigantic misunderstanding. But there was too much going on and not enough time. The storm was coming, and they were losing precious time. No, it's not like that, I swear. Imogen, please just listen. It's not safe. There's a storm coming in. It's supposed to be a blizzard tonight with whiteout conditions. There was no way she was going to leave her horse alone in that. It just made her double down. Even more of a reason for me not to waste my time speaking with you. She was afraid if she looked him in the eyes, she'd break down into tears. She wouldn't give him that power over her. Imogen held on to the mad and wrapped it around her dying heart. She might lose one relationship today, but she'd do anything to protect her other one. At least she and Fortune would have each other. They didn't need Gabe. They'd be fine without him. Her heart stuttered at the thought. Gabe stood there awkwardly, his hands in his pockets so she couldn't see the bruising and the blood. He wanted to hold her and explain everything. For the first time since his parents tragically died, he felt lost and hopeless. Everything was going incredibly wrong. I'm coming with you. We'll take my horses. We'll cover more ground and we can track him more easily. Whatever. Imogen rolled her eyes, but she knew that no matter how angry she was at what she just witnessed, that Gabe was her best chance of getting to Fortune before he was hurt or frozen. She would just have to harden her resolve and tuck her emotions away. Once Fortune was back, safe and sound, she'd have a breakdown. Now, he needed her to stay strong. "I'll drop off the truck and get changed. Meet me over there." She hopped into the truck without another glance and peeled out, the gravel spitting out at him from under the tires, as Cookie barked rapidly, feeling her owner's energy, and he had to jump back to avoid getting struck. She wouldn't look back. She wouldn't look back. Despite Imogen's best efforts, she looked in the rearview mirror. He stood, his hands tucked in his pockets and shoulders hunched against the wind, as Gabe watched her drive away from him. Gabe felt like his future was crumbling in front of him. Whatever precipice they'd been navigating as a couple had been washed away in one stupid moment. He'd been frozen in shock and hadn't pushed Anita away as quickly as he should have. That was on him. Now, he and Imogen were on opposite sides of a huge chasm that he didn't know how to cross. He had never been attracted to Anita. Well, sure, he'd thought about it once or twice when they were on tour, but he'd always been her superior, so it never seemed right. For a long time, he'd considered her as one of the guys. Never had he expected her to kiss him like that. Gabe wanted to chase after Imogen. He was sure that he was watching the love of his life walk away. But instead, he locked down his emotions. It wouldn't be good to lose his head now. He had no chance if he didn't find her horse and make things right. This storm was supposed to be bad, and he had a green horse and a green rider he had to protect, regardless of his turbulent emotions. He also had a dead body, a traumatized victim, and a loose horse to manage before the winter storm dropped 24 inches or more of snow on him. First, he had to get his horse out of the woods, feed and water him, and get everyone ready for a search and rescue mission. Then he'd deal with Lopez. She had to go. Despite the overwhelming obstacles he was faced with, confronting his friend and a victim was the last thing he wanted to do. Imogen raced home to the cabin, tearing down the driveway and skidding to a stop in front of the house. She jumped out of the vehicle, let Cookie out, who was frantic for a potty break, and ran for the front door. "Aunt Jo!" The woman in question poked her head up from the book she was reading on the couch, a cup of herbal tea next to her. "Honey, you're back." Then Jo caught a glimpse of Imogen's face, with tears streaming down it and a red nose. She put down her book and stood up. She crossed the distance quickly and held her niece by the arms, looking closely at her face as if she were trying to ascertain what was wrong from her expressions alone. "What's wrong?" Imogen shook her head, still gasping for breath from her mad dash. "So many things are wrong. Everything is wrong." Imogen held a hand to her chest and focused on taking deep breaths so she wouldn't devolve into a full-blown panic attack. She filled her aunt in briefly about the attempted kidnapping, the fight, and Fortune's escape. "Have you seen Fortune recently?" Jo shook her head in the negative. "No, honey, but I haven't checked. Did he escape again? I thought he was doing so well." Imogen did too. She should never have left him, even for a few days. He was still acclimating to living outside and learning to be a horse without all the expectations of competition. She shouldn't have left while that woman was staying in Gabe's house. She had a feeling something was off, but ignored her instincts. This was a complete and total nightmare. But she didn't say that aloud. "He broke out of the paddock and came this way. I only have a minute to get ready. Gabe is coming with the horses, and we're going to look for him." "Oh, honey, of course you are. But maybe it's a good idea to wait until the storm blows over. It's going to be a real big one, and it will be dangerous." Imogen knew it didn't make sense, but she couldn't just leave him out there. She'd found him when he'd run before. She'd do it again. "I know. That's even more reason to go now and find him before the storm hits. Who knows what could happen? He's not used to living outside yet." She had a point. Jo nodded decisively. "Okay, I'm going to pack you some things you'll need, emergency supplies and the like. Gabe will have emergency supplies in his saddlebags, but I'll let in some food and water and a few other things that might help." Imogen smiled for the first time. Her aunt was the best. "Thank you. Can you look after Cookie so I don't worry about her? I'm afraid she'll try to follow." Cookie barked at the mention of her name. She'd followed Imogen into the house after going to the bathroom and aimed straight for her bed near the fireplace. Jo thought she looked mighty happy to be home, despite everything. "Don't worry about us, we'll have a good old time together. Just worry about yourselves and that horse of yours. Now go get ready, quick. Timing is going to be very important with this weather." Imogen nodded, kissed her aunt on the cheek, and ran for the back bedroom. She wouldn't be able to pack a duffel, and hopefully she wouldn't need a change of clothes. Still, she had to be smart. Imogen quickly donned a thermal base layer, thick wool socks, a wool sweater, and her best pair of boots that she could ride in but still be warm. The red and gold coverall she gave herself for Christmas would be the perfect outerwear for the search, keeping her body heat insulated without the bulk. The last thing she pulled on were her gloves and a balaclava to protect her hands and face against the harsh winds that were starting to pick up as she drove north. The storm wasn't far, and she could feel the clock ticking, counting down and minimizing her chances of starting the search. Imogen patted her pockets, wondering if she had forgotten anything. Nope, she was all set. She started to leave when a bright color on her dresser caught her eye. Biting her lip, she hemmed and hawed before finally crossing the room to grab it and attach it to her belt. You never knew when a knife would come in handy, even if it had been a gift from Gabe. She was proud, but she wasn't stupid.